I think you've had examples of this with clients, right? Where they've invested their money in crypto and then they've gone to settle their house and they haven't been able to settle their house because their crypto's dropped, right?
Yeah, he had to borrow off his mum.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to sell the crypto because it was down. And it was mostly Bitcoin, so to a degree, but he's probably held on and he's come back all right and paid his mum back. But yeah, very volatile asset. Over the short term, we know that can have massive implications if you need the money.
Yeah. So he's crawled out of his mum's basement and gone, hey, mum, can I borrow a couple of bucks? And then skimmy me back in.
Welcome to Checks and Balances, brought to you by Partners Life. I am Michael Vincent. This is James Blair. Hold on to your Weet-Bix, kids. Don't butter that toast. It's term deposits. Are they back?
Okay, so we're doing an episode on term deposits because everybody, Mike, is turning around and going, hey, James, I can get 6% and a bit chucking some money in a term deposit. Surely that's a better place to sit than putting the money into property or the money into shares. So TDs is the aim of the game today.
It's low risk, low reward.
So quickly, what is a term deposit? Pretty straightforward. You go to the bank and go, hey, Mr. Banker, and no bankers exist anymore because there's no branches
and
left.
They're all busy.
Yeah.
And you have to wait in the queue.
Yeah. They say it'll be a 30-minute wait to talk to a real person, and then there'll be some crappy AI off the back of it. But banks don't have AI. So you go, hey, Mr. Banker, I have $10,000 that I can give you. And they will be like, no worries. How long would you like to fix that in for where we have to keep the money? And go, let's say a year. And they go, well, if you give us $10,000, we will pay you 7% over the next year, and that interest will be paid over either as you go or at the end.
Yeah. So why do banks do this, right? Banks have to keep a certain amount of cash on hand that then they can then re-lend back out into the market. So by knowing that they're going to have your $10,000 for 1 year, they can dial that into their books and go, cool, we can lend $30,000 of that money back out into the market again.
So unless the bank falls over, it's pretty much a guarantee you're going to get the money back at the end. So in terms of from a risk perspective, very low risk. You're most likely going to get the money back at the end of it. I guess the question is, why are we saying term deposits might be back into fashion? And the reason for that is interest rates have moved. So if we move back to the good old days, Mike, maybe give us a quick rundown of what's happened with interest rates the last couple of years.
Cool. So interest rates went from sugar high lows of 1.99%. And, that was the good times. Those were the golden years. That when everyone was buying everything, right? But at the same time that at that moment, we are looking at housing interest rates. On the other side of that equation is the term deposit rate because, it's the natural banker's way of doing business, right? You get money at 3%, you lend it out at 6%, you're on the golf course by 3 p.m. So those term deposit rates have to be lower than what you're charging in interest. So if you're charging 1.99% in interest, you're almost paying nothing for your term deposits. And in fact, in some instances, you are having to pay the bank to keep your money there.
Yeah, it's pretty wild times when you reflect. There was billions, if not trillions of dollars at a negative interest rate around the world. And what kind of investment are you, when you're thinking about it, and we're thinking over the last 12 months, right? Share market's gone up 20%, property market's jumped a bit, Bitcoin's jumped 3 trillion%. You're going, in what world were we taking a negative return on our money? But lots and lots of people were doing it.
It was an uncertain world. That is called flight to safety. You are buying a safe asset because I know I'm only going to lose 0.5% over 12 months. I'm not going to lose 100% of my money over 12 months, right? So that's called a flight to safety. Since that time, since everything's kind of come back to a little bit more normal, interest rates have started to climb, and now we're back up where home loan interest rates are about 6-7%. So that means that term deposit interest rates off the back of that have also climbed. So they won't be quite at 6 or 7%, but they will be somewhere around the 4 or 5% for your 12 month.
Yeah, so term deposit rates are much higher than they have historically been over the past few years. There's some very interesting conversations I'm having with clients at the moment that's making me want to grab them and shake them because they are being so silly. They are going, well, James, I'm not going to invest into the share market because term deposits are 6% and that's good return. I'm not going to buy a house right now because I'm just going to, interest rates are high on the lending side. So I'm just going to stick and wait till interest rates drop, and then I'm going to put my money into a house. Mike, run down for the people. Why does that want me to shake them?
Cool. So the thing that you're not taking into account here is the thing that's been bubbling away in the background of the economy and is now in the forefront of the economy for the last 4 years, inflation, right? When you are looking at these returns, you are looking at, a net return versus a gross return.
Yeah, and let me run down the net versus gross thing. So the only guarantee in life is if you put money in term deposits, you're going to lose money. Now you might go to me and go, but you're telling me I'm getting 6%. That's not zero. Well, hold up. Let's break it down. So if you have a 6% term deposit rate, firstly, unfortunately, Mr. Luxon wants his tax. So straight away, we'll just assume a third of that disappears. So we go from a 6% return to a 4% return. 4%, Mike, still isn't zero. However, inflation rate is 4.7%. So you are negative 0.7% in what we call your real return.
Yep, absolutely. And another thing that people often don't think about with term deposits is you used to be able to break them a little bit easier, right? And people who are saving for houses might take it out of a savings account, put it in a term deposit, and they find that house that they love and they need that money tomorrow. However, they cannot get that money tomorrow. And if you have put it in a term deposit and you need to break it before the end of the term, chances are you're not going to get any interest.
Yeah,
they'll take that interest back.
It's a really important point is that when you are locking it up, how sure are you won't need the money for this period of time, right?
Yeah.
So that's why term deposits go backwards, right? Once you take into account tax and the inflation rate, you're going backwards. Now, term deposits, the question is, well, when are they a good investment? So the first piece is when you don't know what you want to do or whether you need the money in the short term. So there's all those thousands of shares, these accounts out there, all those crypto bros investing, and then they want the money short term. Horrible investment, because when they ask for the money in 6 months' time, they could have like 20% less, right, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we want to make sure that if we have a short-term goal, usually like 2 or 3 years, we're keeping the money in cash. Or if we run into some money or we're still trying to make our decision, that's a good reason to also keep it into cash so we can have a bit of a think and then decide what to do. Before we move on, we talk all the time about planning and growing our wealth, but protecting that wealth is just as important. That's why having the right insurance in place can help when life goes unexpectedly.
And that's why this episode is brought to you by Partners Life, a New Zealand operated award-winning insurance provider with over 300,000 Kiwis insured and 89% of claims paid.
Partners Life understand that having some insurance is better than having no insurance. They have flexible and personalized solutions for any budget or situation.
Check out their website in our show notes below. Yeah. So James, I'm always telling you, please don't shake your clients. We can't keep affording these lawsuits. Which one wants you to make you shake them more? $10,000? I need it in 12 months' time. I'm going to put it in a term deposit, or I'm going to put it in crypto.
Well, term deposits, like I said, are good for the short term. So that's great. The crypto bros out there, I think you've had examples of this with clients, right? Where they've invested their money in crypto and then they've gone to settle their house and they haven't been able to settle their house because their crypto's dropped, right?
Yeah, he had to borrow off his mum.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to sell the crypto because it was down. And, I guess it was mostly Bitcoin. So to a degree, but he's probably held on and he's come back all right and paid his mum back. But yeah, very volatile asset. Over the short term, we know that can have massive implications if you need the money.
Yeah. So he's crawled out of his mum's basement and gone, hey, mum, can I borrow a couple of bucks? And then skimmy back in.
Right. So which one do you hate more?
The crypto bros.
Yeah.
The crypto bros, because there's risk. The big thing, right, is there is risk doing lots of things.
Yeah.
There is risk being investing when you've got a short-term goal. That is just stupid. But on the flip side, there is also risk with keeping money in term deposits. So while we've spoken about being term deposits good for the short term, if you have money that is allocated for the long term, if you are leaving it in cash, like I said, it is the only guaranteed investment to go backwards once you factor in inflation. So you need to get those soldiers, those dollars to work, whether it's managed funds, whether it's investing into a business, whether it's investing into property, getting on with the show, right, Mike? Nobody gets rich leaving money in TDs.
No, and I think if you are looking for a short-term investment, you'll be getting a text soon and it'll say, I'm a Nigerian prince. I just need to get some money out of the way, and you get a 4,000% return. That's your best option.
Yeah. So while you might spend a little bit of time in term deposits or savings accounts, there's some really good options that are a little bit more flexible, like cash funds and those sort of things as well. While they are very good while you're making up your mind, if this money is for the long term, do not muck around in term deposits for too long. The other piece to factor in, Mike, the people who I want to shake, obviously, who are... Ravi's losing it because I sound like a bear.
A bear? What?
Yeah, we can stick with that. While that is good for the short term, some people are going, term deposits are high. I'm going to take a little bit here, wait for house prices to get more settled, and then I'll invest. But what we know is going to happen, you are going backwards in term deposit rates. Inflation's going to come down. Property prices are going to go up, and you're going to end up spending like another 100,000 or however much more for the exact same property.
Yeah, get off the fence, get in the property market, do it now.
Yeah. The other piece, just which I alluded to just then, is so the question is what's going to happen with, are term deposit rates going to stay high? So inflation at its peak was 7.2%, which is where term deposit rates were essentially at their highest point as the OCR started to jump up. We're now starting to see inflation start to come down, and we know that eventually the OCR is going to drop, which means interest rates are going to drop. Great for our home lending friends out there who want to save a couple of bucks on interest. But if you have money in term deposit, that means it's only a matter of time till term deposit interest rate's going to drop. And then you're going to go, all right, I better go get a return somewhere else. But all these other assets are going to be more expensive because you wait around too long.
Yep, 100%.
Mike, the thing people don't realize with term deposits as well is they compare it to like investing in the share market or maybe property or something like that. But they are priced quite differently. A term deposit is priced on the day. So you might go, I'm getting 6% today. But then they look at like a share fund and they go, well, the historical return over the past 5 years has been 4% for like, say, a conservative fund. And you're like, why would I invest into a conservative fund when I could invest in term deposit and get a 6% return? The big thing to keep in mind is they are not the same. They're not apples with apples. If you did the same, you would have to look at the average term deposit rate over 5 years, which would be close to diddly squat, versus comparing it to the return. So you've just got to remember they are not the same thing. Investments priced historically over a period of time, term deposits priced today.
Okay. So I'm going to see my financial advisor, James, and I had this great idea that I'd put it in crypto. Then I heard he's going to shake me. Now I thought I'm going to put it in TDs. Crap, still wants to shake me. What are some alternatives outside of those two assets for the investments?
Look, Mike, I think you've just got to accept I'm going to shake you. It is just my nature. No, it's a good point. So you touched on a little bit before, term deposits lack liquidity and flexibility. So depending on when you need the money, you might look at a different option. So some other options that are really good. First one is banks have 32-day notice saver accounts. Yeah. Pretty much all of the main banks. You miss out on a little bit of additional return. So instead of like 6%, you might get 5% or somewhere in that sort of ballpark. The reason that could be a good option is instead of locking it in for like a year, which pretty much you have to get with a term deposit to get like the better returns, you only have to give 32 days notice. So if you're working with your mortgage broker and going, I'm going to buy a house at some point, but I'm not going to buy it soon. And then suddenly they turn around and go, Mike, I found my dream home. You can give the 32 days notice, get the money out and move it, opposed to, like you mentioned, maybe not being able to break the term deposit.
Yeah. And are there any funds that you like the look of?
Yeah, there's a lot of cash funds out there where you have liquidity, you can get access to the money in a couple of days, and it's pretty much the same as the term deposit rates. My only thing with the cash funds is just checking what is in the cash funds. So like, people making things look like they're low risk or they're the similar savings, but they might not be. So just make sure you're looking at what is in the fund. You're dealing with a reputable provider.
Yeah, 100%.
So if you don't want me to shake you, make sure you are thinking about if term deposits are right for you or not. Like I said, really good for the short term, but I promise you, I will find you and I will shake you if it is for the long term and you are not thinking about your options. Much love to Partners Life, who I would never shake. Please subscribe, please review, please like, and we will see you next time.
Cheers.